Great to see you. Of course, I wanted to talk to you as soon as this happened last week. You were you were fired basically from MSNBC. Your job was senior political analyst. This is what you said about Charlie Kirk, and I want to point out that this was when the news broke. You were live on the air. You were on Katie Tur's show, if I remember correctly. And this is what you said. You didn't know at the time, by the way. I just want to set this record straight. And I think many people know this, but if they don't, this was when it was first being reported that shots had fired out at this rally in Idaho. And you were asked about, Utah, sorry, not Idaho. I'm sorry, Idaho, Utah. Apologies, everyone. And you were asked about the political environment at the time. And I'm just going to read the quote so you don't have to. And so I have it right in front of me, Matthew. You said,
Sure.
He's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech or sort of aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions. And I think that is the environment we are in. You said you can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have and then saying these awful words and then not expect awful actions to take place. You also speculated about the circumstances of the shooting, saying, we don't know if this was a supporter shooting their gun off in celebration, so we have no idea about this. Um, let's talk about that. And because I know you were thinking about a lot of things when you were making those statements. Take me back to kind of your thought process and your response to Katie's terse question, if you could.
Sure. So let me give you, I'm glad we're having this conversation so that people understand the context because so many things have been misreported and missaid about all of this. So I was supposed to go on air at 2 Central, 3 Eastern time to talk about something else, Trump or some other thing that was going on. And as I'm waiting, 30 seconds before we're going on, the news breaks that a shot had been fired, right? And so I go on and immediately it's like a shot has been fired. They go to a reporter who says, this is what's going on. We don't know any information. We don't know what's happening. And then they say, and so viewers know, Charlie Kirk is an exceedingly, the reporter says, Charlie Kirk is an exceedingly divisive figure, the reporter says. And then Katie Tur turns to me and says, Matthew, what is this? What kind of political environment are we in? And so I, not wanting to speculate because we don't know anything. One, we didn't even know yet if Charlie Kirk was a target. 2, we didn't know for sure that he'd been shot. And 3, obviously, we didn't know that he had been killed by all this. I say, let's get the facts first because we have no idea what this could be. And I said, it could be because Charlie Kirk, and I didn't say this part, because Charlie Kirk's been a huge proponent of the Second Amendment. He constantly pushed the Second Amendment. I said, who knows? It could be somebody shooting a gun in celebration that Charlie Kirk's here, and isn't it awesome? So that sort of has been reported or suggested that I was somehow dismissive or I was somehow saying that somebody in his crowd was shooting because at the time we had no idea what was going on. I then said, with the environment we're in broadly, I was trying to say the environment we're in broadly is at a time when we have all this divisiveness, and Charlie Kirk is one of these divisive people in America. And I don't think many people would argue with that, though it seems to be there's an argument, seems to be in the aftermath of his death, that whether or not he was divisive, but he said many divisive things in his life. And I said, this is what happens in America when people have hateful thoughts. It leads to hateful words, and then it leads to hateful acts. Trying to context of America. But this hasn't been reported. I followed that up by saying, this hasn't been part of what was on air. I said, the problem in America today is that unlike other modern democracies in the world, we have this toxic stew of both horribly divisive speak on both sides, I said, horribly divisive speak on both sides of this, combined with an unlimited access to guns. And that combination is hugely detrimental to our democracy and our society. After I was finished, I was done. I made no more comment on air. And then they went to he'd been shot. And then they later on went to he'd been killed. And all of that followed after that. So that was the entirety of the context.
So, and when you made those statements, did Katie Tur seem aghast, or did she react in a way? Did she say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, wait a second, Matthew"? I'm just curious because it seems to me that it was perfectly, a perfectly sound statement to make. I know that you were also influenced by sort of the Words Matter campaign.
Yeah.
That I read that in your Substack post about
Yeah.
that, right?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. No, Katie wasn't any aghast or wasn't anything. And I didn't receive a single phone call or a single message from MSNBC for about an hour. I didn't. Nobody called me up, and I've been called up when I was at ABC. I mean, called up before and say, "Hey, you may want to say it differently, or you may want to do it differently, or you may want to go
Right.
back on air and clarify it." As you know, that kind of stuff happens all the time, and especially when you're in the heat of a moment. In that, it wasn't until all of this sort of right wing sort of media got on it, and then MSNBC reached out to me. So they didn't reach out to me at all in the interim period of they had no problem, as far as I knew, with my words or what I said or anything like that until this sort of right wing group of folks then fed on it and then basically said, they started saying, I said Charlie Kirk deserved it. And Jesse Waters said that exact statement. Jesse Waters said, Matthew Dowd said on air that Charlie Kirk deserved this, which is blatantly a lie in this. And so then I got that about an hour or so later, as I say, I was reached out and said, "Hey, if they asked me, have you looked at social media?" And I said, "No, I don't. I'm not looking at social media." Well, there's a big uproar among the right about your comments. And I said, "Well, what comments?" And well, what you said on air. I said, "Did you look at what I said on air?" No. Well, when I said, "Why don't you go back and look at what I said on air and look at that?" And then 15 minutes later, it's like, well, they've interpreted your actions to mean this. You need to put out an apology. You need to put out an apology and apologize for this. And I was like, well, what did I say that was like problematic? And at that point in time, the MSNBC, in my view, had forgotten the timeline. They'd quickly forgotten the timeline, adopted the narrative that was being pushed that I said this after we knew he was shot. And many people were saying this, I said this after we knew he was killed, which he wasn't even known until like an hour after I was on air that all of that happened. And you have to put out an apology. Otherwise, we're going to put out an apology. Otherwise, we're going to put out a statement. And I said, let me put something out. I wrote something up that basically said, in no way was I intimating that this, and there's an apology online that you can read. That's not my original apology that I wrote. My original apology that I wrote, nobody knows this, is the first time I've said this, what was, love to his family, much thought and prayers for his family and his friends at this time, which is in there. And then I said, I made an appearance in a sudden moment, and I said I apologize if my words were interpreted to mean X. That's what I said. I apologize to my words were interpreted to mean X. In no way did I want to intimate that Charlie Kirk's words were responsible for what happened to him. They got that, and it wasn't enough for them. And so they wrote one which is what then I said, okay, fine, I'll put what you guys want on. I'll do that. Fine. And I thought that was going to be it. Right, Katie? And then about 15 minutes later, they said, the president of the network is going to put out a statement. And I said, I thought we agreed that I would put out a thing and that was going to be it. Well, no, she wants to then she put out her statement, which everybody knows, calling my acts, calling my words, unacceptable, insensitive, or whatever, all the things she said. They put that out. And about 2 hours later, I got a phone call, not from the president of network, who I know, Rebecca Cutler, who I know. I got a phone call from the head of talent and the producer, or one of the main people that was reaching out to me, saying I'd been terminated. That's how it went down.
When you got that call, what did you say, Matthew?
Well, I said, I think you guys are making a huge mistake. I said, and I know that that's not anything what I meant. it's been misconstrued, and they agreed with that. They agreed it had been misconstrued, but they said it didn't matter. The decision's been made. This is it. I said, well, you guys get to make that call. I think it's a mistake on your part to do this for many different reasons. I'm not even talking about me personally. I'm talking about this environment we're in, that you're going to just throw raw meat and they're not going to let up on me. I'm not the end of it. I won't be the end of this. So I think it's a big mistake, but I'm a big boy. I know when I'm told, so there's nothing I can say. Bye.
You know, after you were fired, it was highly unusual, I thought, that uh, the CEO of Comcast, Matthew Brian Roberts, the president, Mike Kavanaugh, and Versant CEO Mark Lazarus. Versant is the new name of the MSNBC spinoff. Is Rachel Maddow watching, by the way? Oh, I don't know if she is, but anyway, hi, Rachel, if you're here. I'm not sure if you are or not. But anyway, they sent out a letter, Matthew, to Comcast NBC Universal employees that read, you may have seen that MSNBC recently ended its association with a contributor who made an unacceptable and insensitive comment about this horrific event. That coverage was at odds with fostering civil dialogue and being willing to listen to the points of view of those who have differing opinions. We should be able to disagree robustly and passionately, but ultimately with respect. We need to do better. I'm just going to read another paragraph from the letter, Matthew. Bear with me. Charlie Kirk believed that, quote, when you people stop talking, really bad stuff starts. Regardless of whether you agree with his political views, his words and actions underscore the urgency to maintain a respectful exchange of ideas, a principle we must champion. We believe in the power of communication to bring us together. Today, that belief feels more vital than ever. Something essential is fractured in our public discourse, and as a company, wait, you guys, don't do that for a second. That values the power of information. We have a responsibility to help mend it. As employees, we ask you to embody our values in your work and communities. We should engage with respect, listen, and treat people with kindness. Let's talk about that letter. I was pretty stunned at that letter, that that these guys were weighing in on the whole thing. What did you make of it?
Well, I was shocked that why would they do this? Why would they weigh in? I mean, normally, okay, the president of MSNBC had already made the decision, or or in conjunction with them, maybe. I don't know that, but it certainly feels like the way it went down, it was made in conjunction with them in this, but I don't know. Um, I was like, why is this being raised at that level and them putting out a statement like that? That was my first thing. What is this? Why are they doing this? And anybody else can speculate why they might be doing this. But the second thing is I read it, I was like, wait a second. You guys are saying that Charlie Kirk, wanted to foster a sharing of opinions and like not not quote unquote terminating people because of their views or viewpoints. And I was hired and paid to give my view and viewpoints, which I thought I've done. I think I've done over 1,000 appearances on MSNBC. I've done it in a respectful, measured way. Uh, it seemed to me their statement completely um, was against what they had just did to me. That's what I didn't get. Like, you're saying all this and you saying this is what Charlie Kirk wanted to do in his life. You guys just did the opposite.
What has been the reaction, Matthew? I mean, obviously, a lot of people have written about it, and then I want to talk to you about both Brian Kilmeade and Jimmy Kimmel. But what have you been hearing from folks in the aftermath of your firing?
Well, it's as you know, in these things, that you discern. It's a great process of discernment when you're in it, because you learn who are your friends and who will stand by you and who won't, and people you thought were your friends and they don't stand by you in this. So it's an eye-opening process that is sometimes painful to see. I had many, 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 many people reach out to me and said, this is BS. I can't believe this. This is wrong. There's no way. And then there's people that were like, well, tell me what happened, that were sort of ancillary involved. And then when I tell them the timing of this, when I put the stamp on the conversation. They're like, "What? You said this before?" I said, "Yeah, I said this before." Um, and so uh, it's been a wide range of things. I mean, I've had death threats. I've had people call my phone with death threats. I've had the local police come by my house because they've been monitoring social media communications and they were worried about me. The local police here where I live, monitoring it, and they just wanted to make sure I was okay. And they said they're going to keep tabs on things and come by regularly and all of that. So that's unsettling, as you can imagine. That's unsettling, but it's not new. I've sort of had ongoing death threats since Trump came to office because I've been critical of him off and on over the course of that from, crazy people that respond to whatever's being said on their networks or whatever. Um, so I feel loved in a large degree by many people and held up by many people. But I also have to admit that I've been, incredibly disappointed in many others.
Do you think that Comcast issued this statement or this letter? They've been targeted by Trump, but not as significantly as ABC or CBS. And do you think they were trying to kind of insulate themselves a little bit from further legal action by Trump by issuing a statement? Perhaps they were afraid that, they're all afraid of getting sued, right? These corporations. And they're all afraid of him basically extorting them for money, right? So I wonder if in many ways the Comcast people were were doing that to protect themselves.
Well, I okay, so I don't know the answer to that, right? I think that's the only logical, without more information, it's the only logical conclusion I can come to is they were worried that somehow they were going to be punished by somebody in authority at some way, or whatever merger deals they have, or whatever they are worried about, they were going to be hurt by an administration that has shown no slowdown in trying to hurt others or extract a pound of flesh from people. It's the only logic that I can come up with that would explain why they would do that. Because to me, it what they did, both sections, both my termination in a way that they knew was being misconstrued, but they did it anyway. And then that statement goes totally against the audience they're trying to speak to. Because keep this in mind, Katie. One of MSNBC's brands and things that they push forward constantly is they have the courage to stand in this moment and tell the truth. And they have the courage, they're not going to back down. They're not, no matter what Donald Trump or what people do, no matter what people say, we're going to get on air and we're going to do this and we're going to tell the truth. We're going to do this and we're not going to be pushed and threatened and all that. We're going to tell the truth. That brand and what they did, to me, they have completely lost any moral high ground on that brand. And I will tell you this, almost every single time on air, it doesn't matter what show I'm on, part of the conversation is always this: how can the Republicans, how come nobody stands up to Donald Trump? Why don't the Republicans, who know that he's wrong and know that this is wrong, why don't they stand up to him? Why don't they have the courage? This is like the ongoing conversation that on air most of the time with MSNBC is, what is wrong with the Republicans? And my question today is, what is wrong with you, with MSNBC?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, people are asking on social, are you frustrated that you lost your job, but someone like Brian Kilmeade at Fox News, am I saying his name right? Kilmeade, right? At Fox News gets to keep theirs after proposing on air that mentally ill homeless people should be killed by involuntary lethal injection.
I'm not upset about it because I'm not upset
Frustrated.
about I'm not frustrated or upset that he didn't lose his job and I did, because I'm not a believer that people should automatically be terminated because of something, because that's obviously part of Fox's thing, and they obviously have no standards. So, they have no standards, and they demonstrated they have no real standards of what goes on air and what people say, because you could give up 10,000 examples of crazy stuff that's been said in this. I'm more upset and frustrated by the environment we're in, where somebody like him continues on air and somebody like me is fired. And what does that say about us as a country? That's more of my frustration. I'm going to be fine. Unlike many people who suffer the onslaught of this, they may not be fine. I'm going to be fine. I'll go on. I have a good life. My kids love me. All of that is fine. I can still buy groceries and all of that. So I'll be fine. I'll have my voice will be out there in whatever way I want it out there. But it is a concerning, exceedingly concerning thing about what does it say of us as a country.
Not only that, I mean, yes, sort of, yes, the big picture, but I also think about the chilling effect, Matthew, this has on other commentators who are on MSNBC, who are going to be careful what they say, be less critical of the Trump administration for fear something like this happens.
Well, Katie,
And I,
let me speak to that, because I said that when they were terminating me. I said, you guys understand what this is going to do? That, what this will do, this will cause people in the building to do. And they were like, decision's been made. Decision's been made. And in the aftermath of this, I've had any number of MSNBC, and won't mention names, any number of MSNBC people call me and say they're reluctant to now invite certain guests on air. They're reluctant now to say certain things that they would normally say. They're reluctant now to sort of book programming in a way that reveals what they want to reveal because they're scared. That's already happening.
I'm really surprised at MSNBC. I got to be honest with you, Matthew, the way they handled it. And it is really bizarre and surprising and disappointing. And I'm sorry this happened to you.
Well, I appreciate that, Katie. I thank you for saying that. I guess I was surprised in the moment. I mean, I'm a person that's experienced enough political campaigns and enough in life, and I've seen enough. I was surprised and a bit shell shocked in the moment, but upon reflection, I'm actually not all that surprised because, as you probably know as well as anybody, uh, on these major corporations and these major news platforms, loyalty in their mind goes one way. Loyalty is a one direction. And you think it's two directions, but it's one direction in this. And it's a lesson that I've learned in life that, like, don't think that whoever you're doing things is going to be loyal back unless you can trust that person. And so
I,
shell shocked initially and all of that. But, you know, there's a reason why Maya Angelou said, famous quote of Maya Angelou said, the courage is the most important of all virtues, because courage allows you to practice every other virtue consistently. And the lack of courage that exists in platforms across America is astounding to me.
I agree with that. And people are saying, that I wasn't surprised, but MSNBC to me kind of stood apart as a news organization that really encouraged kind of civil discourse. And I think what you said was manipulated and misinterpreted. And I don't know, they get criticized. They're like featured on Fox News every night, you know? So
And you mentioned Jimmy Kimmel. What's amazing, and now if you watch any of their shows in the last 24 hours, all the shows are talking about how, like, this is awful for America that Jimmy Kimmel was, indefinitely suspended, and isn't this awful for America, and it's a chilling thing for the First Amendment, and all they're saying that on every platform. Not one person has said anything about me. Not one person on that network has said, they've all gone out of their way to say, isn't this horrible what happened to Jimmy Kimmel? Isn't even including Morning Joe and Mika, who went after me after the show, basically saying they were glad I was terminated. And now today they're talking about how awful it is for our country that somebody like Jimmy Kimmel can't say what he said and he is indefinitely suspended, and not an iota about what their employer just did to another employee.
did you hear from any of the anchors or correspondents?
Some of them. Yeah. I mean, and all of them, all the ones that I heard from were like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. This is awful. I can't believe this has happened. I can't believe this has happened. This is horrible. This is horrible. It doesn't say good things about our company. This is from anchors on air. That doesn't say good things about our company. And, it's not a good thing. And that I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And that's, that's what they say.
What was your reaction when you heard about Jimmy Kimmel just kind of taking your own situation, even though that's hard to do? But when you heard about it, I'm sure as somebody who's covered politics for a very long time, Matthew, and somebody who also experienced this kind of, cancellation or, in his case, indefinite suspension, just big picture, what did you think?
It's an awful time in America, another example of an awful time in America where we're abandoning the First Amendment, or I guess the First Amendment only applies if you say certain things a certain way. Otherwise, you don't have First Amendment rights. And even a comedian, a late night comedian, and I read through everything that Jimmy Kimmel said, and I was like, "What? He got he got indefinitely suspended, which I think means he's fired, but I don't know. If I were Jimmy Kimmel, I wouldn't go anywhere near that show again. If I were Jimmy Kimmel again, after they showed their true colors in this, so that was my initial reaction. My second one was kind of a smile on my face, actually, Katie, because I thought, like when you go through this initially, and I wrote this I posted this on Substack and on Blue Sky. I said I was sitting at the Truth Bar, sipping a drink by myself, and I was obviously feeling, alone and all of that. And then all of a sudden, in walks, Jimmy Kimmel, and then in walks Karen, the woman from the Washington Post, and so now I have company. And so I thought to myself, if I'm in the group of those folks, if I'm now in that group, I, glory be. I'm happy to be part of that group.
The View didn't even mention Jimmy Kimmel's, indefinite hiatus. Did you find that odd? I don't know if you watched The View. I sometimes watch it. I didn't
I,
catch
I
it
don't
today.
I didn't watch The View, but I'm the way, when I left ABC, and one of the reasons I wrote this that I left was, Donald Trump called up numbers of times to ABC when I was there and tried to get me fired. Called the head of the network tried to get me fired, and White House staff called. ABC tried to get me fired, and ABC didn't tell them to go jump in a lake. Didn't tell the president, we stand by Matthew. What ABC did was come to me and said, can you tone it down? That's what ABC did in reaction to that. So I'm not surprised because they're the company that just paid $16 million and, threw George under the bus
Right.
in the process. So I guess, when they think their bottom line is threatened or they're worried about something, it didn't surprise me that that, and I'm sure they put out some notice. They may not have done it by email because now everybody's worried about what they say in email or whatever. That they may have called up and said, "Don't say a word." Who knows? But I'm not surprised at ABC because my witness to them was when they were threatened. They were threatening me. Their response wasn't to stand by me. Their response was to come to me and try to get me to change.
What do you think? Where is this going to lead, Matthew? Do you think anyone is going to have the courage? Any network? We were talking earlier. I was talking with Tim Miller, and before that, Bill Carter. Who the media writer for the New York Times for so
Mhm.
long, and they both made the point basically that intimidation doesn't work if you refuse to be intimidated. Do you think that anyone is going to have the courage to stand up to this administration and say, you can't do this? There's a First Amendment in this country, and it doesn't mean just speech that you think is flattering to you.
Well, I think there are persons that are doing it, right? There are persons that are doing it that keep their voice out there. It's one of the reasons I wrote the Substack, even though I had death threats and all of that, and I knew that my security was threatened. I wanted to basically say, here's what actually happened, so everybody has it. So at least the truth will set people free, and they understand this. In this, I, I mean, we're in a dangerous, perilous moment right now, that I get why people sort of disengage or will step back. I get it, because like their livelihood is threatened, their lives are threatened, they're all of that. But as we've learned in history, the only way to confront it the only way to beat it is to confront it. And I hope enough people, and the more of us there are, the better it is. I mean, there's strength in when you're by yourself, you feel like, wow, I'm under onslaught, I'm under this. But as others get added to it, I mean, I tell you, if somebody would be smart, somebody would, and I know somebody's thinking this today. There's a country song about all my exes. I mean, if
Live
all
in
the
Texas.
exes, yeah, if all the exes of the ex, all of us who are fired, let go, all that, there's a pretty good talent pool of folks that could form the basis of a news network that would actually do the right thing. And MSNBC better be really careful, because if that happens, they're done. They're done in this space. But I think the more of us there are, the more there's going to be a momentum of like, let's band together and do something. And that's what my hope is based in.
Well, you're welcome to come and talk to me anytime, Matthew. I have so much respect for you and your thoughtfulness, and have appreciated your perspective for a very long time. And in fact, I want to ask you kind of an unrelated question to get your expertise. And that is a Wall Street Journal article I read earlier today that said the Trump administration is going to ask the Supreme Court to allow them to review the Fed governor, Lisa Cook. Lisa Cook has been accused by the Trump administration of doing, kind of, I don't know, fudging the books and not declaring two homes or something like that as an excuse to remove her so Trump can put somebody on the board of governors who's more easily manipulated or an ally of his administration. Um, so I don't know if you're the right person to ask about this, but
Well, I would say, here's what I would say about that. First of all, the way this works, as you know, the way this works well in our economy is there's an independent Fed.
right.
And if that is allowed, and Donald Trump's already trying to say he doesn't want an independent Fed. He's already, I mean, he wants Powell fired. He wants all of this. He wants her removed. He wants all of that. And so to me, all of this is, and if whether you're conservative, liberal, moderate, whatever you are, this is all the step-by-step process of authoritarianism, where you just slowly chip away at all these independent levers of government that make the foundation of our democracy. We no longer have an independent FBI director. He basically does whatever he's told by the White House. We no longer have an independent attorney general. She basically does whatever she's told by the White House. He now wants to abolish an independent Fed so they do exactly what he's told. We don't have an independent HHS where science leads on health, and an independent CDC where they can make decisions based on data and health. All of those things, from the enforcement of the laws to protecting our children from health crisis, vaccinations, and now the Fed. And this is all, every time one of these steps happen, people say, well, that's as far as it'll go. And then it goes another step. 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 And then all of a sudden people wake up and say, how did we get in a dictatorship? That's how it happens.
It's like a frog in
It's like
slowly
a frog in
boiling
boiling
water,
water.
right?
Yep, exactly.
Um, well, I am really I'm so happy to see you. I'm so happy to talk to you. As I said, come and talk
Thank
anytime
you.
and give us your perspective. Before we go, by the way, I hope everyone signs up for Matthew's Substack. It's called Lighthouse Sentinel. I'd love for you, for people who aren't familiar with you, to tell us a little bit about your background, because I think they might find it interesting.
Sure, sure. So I grew up one of 11 kids in an Irish Catholic family in Michigan, which is where the lighthouse things. I've been a huge. Every time there's a place I can go and see a lighthouse, I'll go, because Michigan on the Great Lakes has lighthouses. That's why it's called that. And Sentinel is like it's something that protects. So it's my idea of protecting democracy. In that, my father worked in the auto industry. My mom was a public school teacher in Detroit. I have 6 brothers, 4 sisters who are all over the country and in various political leanings, which is why I think I have a pretty good bead on things. I've lived in Texas. I've run campaigns on both sides of the aisle. I got interested in politics because of Watergate. I watched the Watergate hearing when I was 12 years old. And when I watched it, I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to get involved in politics. And so since then, I volunteered in campaigns and worked on campaigns. I did Democratic campaigns in here for Ann Richards and a lieutenant governor named Bob Bullock. And then I did George W. Bush's presidential campaign. I did Arnold Schwarzenegger's governor's race. And then I got out. Then I decided I was done with that. And then ABC hired me. And then after that, I went to MSNBC. I've written a couple of books, one sort of on leadership and then more and more spiritual, more sort of, it has some poetry I've written and stuff like that, but a much more spiritual approach to life. I grew up Catholic. I still am a person of faith, though I have disagreed with the church on many things and what's happened in the church. But, being one of 11 kids, I think gave me a good training ground
Your poor
for,
mom, by the way.
yeah. And she passed away rather young. Right after the number 11 moved out of the house, a month after number 11, when the house was the first time the house was empty in 40 something years, she passed away.
Mhm.
But my dad's still around. He just turned 91 yesterday. But I love being from a big family and being Irish. I always have, I'm willing to get in a fight.
And how would you describe yourself politically? Because, you have worked for Democrats and Republicans.
I would say I'm probably the best. More of an independent. I believe that right now the only avenue to protect our democracy that's available right now,
Uh-oh. Oh, wait.
the only one in defense of the Constitution and the way our democracies work and one person, one vote and the rule of law. And so, though I'm an independent, I would say that I would tell people that for the time being, that right now the only path to protect our democracy is voting for Democrats. So in many ways, people say that makes me a Democrat, and if people want to say that, that's fine. I believed in a Republican Party. My first vote for president was for Ronald Reagan. That was my first vote for president. I voted for Ronald Reagan because I believed in small government. I believed in the rule of law. I believed in free trade. I believed in all of these things that don't seem to have any proximity to the Republican Party today. There's nothing even close to it. So that's why all the time we have these conversations about conservative, liberal, or it really doesn't. The people that are advocating these things aren't conservative. They're really not conservative. They're not principled conservative like Liz Cheney or Adam Kilsinger, other people like Kinzinger, or other people like that. So I would, I'm progressive on some issues. I'm conservative on other issues. I would say I'm independent, but I would say I'm advocating for the Democratic Party today because I think it's the only option that stands in the breach to protect our democracy today.
Well, that's a good place to end our conversation. Again, Matthew, great to see you. Thank you so much for
Thank
doing this. And everyone who's been watching this whole Substack Live with Bill Carter and Tim Miller and Matthew Dowd, we're really grateful. We work really hard to put these shows together. I have a team, they're all sitting behind me on their computers. And Matthew, listen, I wish you all the best. Let's stay in touch. And if there's anything I can do for you please, I'm just a text away.
Thank you, Katie. I really appreciate it. And thank you for having this conversation because it allowed me to sort of explain the entire context of it and what actually happened, which most people don't know because doesn't get reported that way. And certainly MSNBC isn't reporting it that way.
Well, I'm glad that we were able to provide you with a platform to do that, Matthew.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you. Thank you for what
Okay.
you do. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon.